respect causes us to want other qualities of gratitude and joy, patience, kindness, goodness, and other things. And so respect is huge. And I think respect comes from admitting we are really we're just really not very different at all.
We all know that technology has a negative impact on kids. Even technology companies know that it does. So what do we do when their curbs that they put in place that they say are going to help now parents monitor kids' activity and decrease some of the addictive nature of the apps, when even their own internal studies show that those don't have an impact? How do we as parents then step in and guide our kids well in these moments? Dr. Kathy has some important insights today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment, Facing the Dark. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, there's a large body of research that links social media and the use of social media to negative mental health effects on kids and adolescents. I mean, there's a 2019 JAMA study that found that kids who use social media for more than 3 hours a day had 2.5 times the risk of anxiety and depression, even loneliness. If kids were already struggling with mental health, spending more than 30 minutes a day led to almost twice the risk of these symptoms. Publicly, TikTok has really promoted the use of different tools to pull kids offline and even to regulate how much they spend online on their app and how much they spend kind of sleeping. One of these tools gives users a prompt time of only 60 minutes a day. Another tool allows parents to limit their kids' usage to 40 minutes to 2 hours. Parents can kind of decide that. We've talked about some of these things on the podcast. Now, TikTok has also promoted break videos that encourage users to take a mental break and step away from the app. But internal tests from TikTok have found that their tools lead to virtually no change in usage. In that study, before the tool was used, teens were spending about 108 minutes a day. Afterward, they spent approximately 107 minutes a day on TikTok. That was according to a recent NPR report. Now, Dr. Kathy, I use TikTok in this example not because we like to talk about it or think that other kids should use it, but by and large right now, it is I would say kind of the app of choice for young people. And it's actually the one that is targeting young people probably the most in some different settings. And in that, Dr. Kathy, I've been known to tell my friends that really the most dangerous thing you could do for your daughter is to get her a cell phone. I just don't know that the connection with friends outweighs the obstacles that some of these platforms show. And I just don't think that these platforms care about my kids the way that I do. What is it about teen culture and maybe even young girls that makes technology so addicting and even problematic as they mature and grow?
Well, first, let me affirm your decision that you and your wife have decided, to keep your older daughter off of social media. It is a dangerous thing to give them a cell phone. And then through that, they have access to things like this and other issues we could discuss as well. So let me affirm you and any other person listening that they don't need a cell phone until they need a cell phone. And we could, again, go on and on. But what makes it addicting? Things like Twitter, curiosity, I think beauty. I think girls are intrigued by, motivated by, and drawn to beauty. I think whoever created filters, like I hope I never meet the person, because, that added a whole nother dimension of comparison. And, they can play for an hour with one picture of themselves, making it look, in a variety of ways. And I imagine in some ways that's fun and playful, and in others it could end up being quite damaging, but it keeps them there. I think sometimes what makes this kind of technology addicting, fear and groupthink. Everybody's on it, so I can't miss out, and I don't want to look like I'm being raised by old-fashioned parents because I'm a cool kid. I think that's probably something that's going on in the mind of some of the young girls. And let me also say clicks. Girls are known for clicks. I cannot tell you, Wayne, how many parents I've talked to who would rather raise boys than girls. And they tell me that often it is the girls are so cliquey. And the girls, So I wonder if the addiction is to the people group they have on their app and it becomes just I have to stay there. This is my group, this is my clique, and I'm cool here, and therefore I need to stay there.
You know, Dr. Kathy, we've said a lot here that if we were kind of in their shoes, in the teens' shoes, we might be addicted to the experiences the technology has and even the harms probably too. Why do you think that it's important for us to empathize with kids rather than to just say, well, I didn't grow up with this, so you don't need to either, and just kind of brush it off? How does empathy drive maybe some of the change or health that we want to see kids have with how we're going to, guide them or encourage them with tech?
Yeah, I realize that you brought this up because a very specific, true example from my experience talking to young adults and teenagers. When I say early in a 1 hour presentation about technology that I would be like you if I was your age, because I'm explaining how their brain has been developed differently. It is not your fault that you believe choice is your right. It is not your fault that you are quick paced and quickly impatient. Impatience will always be your default. Patience will always be mine because of how we were raised. It doesn't make me better than you. It is what it is. And then I say you can rise above that, especially if you're a believer. Patience will always be a fruit of the Spirit. And so this is what encourages them to then lean into the truth of the scripture. But when I say I would be like you, it's not your fault, they listen to me. I've had young people say, I listened because you said you would be like me and you didn't stand in judgment, and you never made me feel like I was a bad person because I game a lot or believe that, there's a reboot button that does marvelous things. So I think that's important. If you want them to listen to you and you want to be the teacher of some authority, you have to share that. It leads to respect. I think it demonstrates to the young people that you respect them and the dilemma that they find themselves in. It's not their fault. And respect leads to other qualities, right? I wrote about this in my book about biblical character. Respect causes us to want other qualities of gratitude and joy, patience, kindness, goodness, and other things. And so respect is huge. And I think respect comes from admitting we are really we're just really not very different at all.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I do appreciate that. And I was pulling that out of the talks that I've heard you give on this topic. And so with that, Dr. Kathy, I know that we need to connect with teens, and I know that we need to do that in a way that kind of guides them. But traditionally, I think a lot of us find that it might be hard to because we don't understand the world they're growing up in. How would you recommend a parent or somebody who's really trying to care for kids? How should they connect with teens? What strategies would you have for us as we want to be really a positive influence and somebody that knows, but we just don't understand the language or the clothes or the music or even what it's like to grow up thinking, oh, I should check my phone today?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think we admit that to the kids. We say, hey, help me understand you. So I like to say that we walk toward them. We don't always make them walk toward us. So walk toward them and ask them, what's the best music you've heard lately? Could I listen to it? What's the show that you're binge watching? Just assume they are. Or who are you following on X that you find really fascinating or encouraging? Or why do you follow who you follow on social media? Let them teach you and talk with you. And they might not all open up quickly. You might have to ask more than once and be curious about all of their existence. And maybe they'll answer those questions about technology. Know who they are. Treat them as individuals. I think teenagers, whether you have, 2 kids or 8 kids, they're individuals. A friend of mine who has triplets used to introduce them as the triplets, and grateful that he heard me when I said they're individuals. You have twin daughters, and I've heard you and Nancy both make a point of introducing them by name, even though most of us will never remember which one is which. But treating them as if they're individuals because they are honors them and encourages them, I think, that you do want to know who they are. What if I would say, Wayne, that we can't be too busy? I think busyness is the work of the devil, both the busyness of the adult in the home and the busyness of the kids. If they're on too many extracurricular activities, too many committees at school or church, or you're the one who's just super involved, maybe whether your work hours or your volunteer hours are just extensive and you're not available, it's going to be a problem to connect. Talk while you're busy, something that we talk about often when we teach about conversations. You don't have to wait for the perfect quiet moment. Boys will always talk more when they're busy. So go run errands. Put your boy in the car with you. Go walk the aisles of the, car store or the building store if they're into that kind of thing, and just talk. Play a board game. And in the middle of it, they'll share something more intimate with you that they never would have shared kind of at a kitchen table interrogation, especially if their siblings are there. So look for opportunities to get alone with them in the quiet, maybe in the busyness. Talking in the dark can be really profitable. Kids tell me on a regular basis they don't want to look into your eyes if they're going to disappoint you. I understand that. That's why the car also works well. I used to recommend that you go for a ride when you need to talk, because they can't leave if you're in the middle of a kind of hard conversation about the attitude they're throwing toward whomever. And the kids have told me, I like the car because my dad can't leave when I need to talk about something that's kind of big and scary. So for some of your kids, those might be things that would work. And then what if I also suggested that one of the best ways to connect with young adults and our teens and our preteens is to share in something, to read a book together, to play a game together, and to look forward to it, to start chess, but let it not be finished. And Tuesday night, Dad, you have a few minutes to play chess tonight. So share in something, an experience, an activity, a service project, a book, a game. Go to a concert together. They might not even know if they're going to like it. It doesn't matter. You might believe it'll be good for them, and you go and then you talk through it, afterwards. I think sharing in something can be a very beautiful thing.
I love what Dr. Kathy had to say today. It reminded me of a passage that comes out of 2 Kings chapter 5, and I'll begin reading at verse 4. Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. By all means go, the king of Aram replied. I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read this. With this letter, I am sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of leprosy. This is a quick look into a story that's happening inside of 2 Kings. And the story really rests on the back of this young girl from Israel. She had been serving Naaman's wife, and in that notices Naaman's leprosy and has an understanding of the power of God that can heal Naaman. I love this story because of the simple focus of it on this young girl, the servant girl, who is in captivity, and her attention to detail to understand what God might have been doing. Because this young servant girl felt known by God, she understood that her God would also see the challenges that Naaman had. I think for teens today, when we think of this, specifically the story that we talked about, there's a natural reality that they can feel completely lost in the world, completely unseen. Really, social media companies don't care, and they don't even see them. And the whole time, teens are fighting to be seen by this world of social media influencers and users to find themselves inside of someone's algorithm, to gain popularity and influence. All the while, the God of the universe sees them. I wonder if we pull our kids back from some of these social media influences and just guide them to see God the same way that the slave from Israel felt seen and known by God, and then felt in such a relationship that she thought that God was going to continue to see and know other people who weren't following him at that time. I think guiding our kids in this way to help them understand that they're seen and known by God can be a bright light that will shine and cut through some of the darkest, most tumultuous times that they're going to experience. And I hope that's an encouragement for you. And I hope this whole podcast is an encouragement for you. I just want to remind you that we're in the middle of a big giving season here at Celebrate Kids. We're launching into 2025 and working with Dr. Kathy on a couple of different book projects. We've got some big video things that'll be coming out here soon with Focus on the Family and pregnancy resource centers to help guide and encourage those parents. And I just want to encourage you, if you like what we're doing here and feel compelled, would you consider giving to Celebrate Kids as we close out the calendar year? You can do that very simply by going to celebratekids.com/give and join in what God is doing here through Celebrate Kids today. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name's Wayne Stender. Thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.